Well, I first like to, before we begin the questioning with our candidates, is make sure that we acknowledge our sponsors. Bernie Marino, Frank LaRose, Matt Dolan, of course, Eastside GOP. Let's see here. Lucy Sticken, Brandon and Katie Davis. Austin Cook, Shay Hawkins. Let's see. And our three GOP chairs, of course, Dale Fellows, Nancy MacArthur, and Lisa Sticken. Let's give them a round of applause. We also have a number of elected officials here. Of course, you just met John Plechnik, who gave the Pledge of Allegiance. And we have, let's see, Karen Schneider, the mayor of Mayfield, or of Gates Mills. Karen here? Right here. Where's Karen? Great. Roger Sinnenberg for running for judge. Roger, where are you? His wife, oh, I'm sorry, his wife's running. That was probably a big surprise to him.
Judge Joan Sinnenberg.
And we have, I'm sorry?
Judge Joan Sinnenberg.
Judge Joan Sinnenberg. Okay, yes, great. And we have Judge Gene Lucci. Where is Gene? Right here? Okay. Did we miss any elected officials? Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about some ground rules here for this. This is going to be a great event. This is an opportunity for all of us as Republicans. We're all on the same team after all. We might play different positions from time to time, but we're on the same team. And we don't want to have any shouting. We don't want to have any misbehavior, certainly from the audience. I know all three of the candidates very well. I consider all three of them friends, and they are truly professional people. So we're not going to see any inappropriate activities, certainly by our esteemed three candidates here for this race. We're going to have two types of questions after the opening statements are concluded. We'll start with each of the three giving a 3-minute opening statement. Then we're going to go into questions, and we're going to have two types of questions. What I call major questions, whereby they will have each, in changing order here, just to mix it up, 2 minutes to answer the question. And I will intersperse in between some of the major questions what I'm calling rapid fire questions that will be shorter subjects with shorter answers, less than a minute hopefully. So we have the benefit of really understanding in the time that we have that's limited as much knowledge about the candidates' views on various issues so we can all make our decisions as we approach the primary. Okay? So that's kind of the protocol. If someone is mentioned negatively, if one of the candidates is mentioned negatively by another, they will have a minute to respond to that and to rebut whatever was said. If I happen to miss any of those, please, candidates, just raise your hand and let me know that I missed that, and you'll get recognized to give your rebuttal here. At the end, we will have a closing 3 minutes from each candidate. And before each question is asked on the major questions, I will indicate what the order of the answer is going to be. And again, I try to mix it up so that it's as neutral as entirely possible. Are there any procedural questions from anybody in the room? Okay, can we welcome our three candidates up here? Senator Matt Dolan. Matt, right here. Secretary Frank LaRose. And businessman Bernie Marino. And where's the timekeeper? There you are, okay. Right in front where you should be. Okay, so she will give you guidance as to how you're doing with your time here. Okay, so first up for the 3-minute opening statement is Senator Dolan.
Thank you, Jerry. I hope I don't violate the rules right away with shouting. But I promise, if you can hear in the back, please raise your hand and we'll make sure we keep our voices up. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you for the three prospective parties for putting this on. It's important, and I hope you learn a lot. You know, I really enjoy these because it gets me a chance to talk about what I've accomplished. But I'm going to spend my minutes talking a little bit about me, because I know a lot of people in this room, and you all know me as a senator or former rep. You may not know my family. You know the end story. But you don't know that my dad's dad died when he was 12 years old. He was the youngest of four. And because of his athletic ability, he got a chance to go to college. He got there and realized that's not where he's going to make his living. He then finished law school and undergrad in 5.5 years, and then joined the Marines. My mom took a different path. She graduated first in her class in high school in Florida. But imagine you're the guidance counselor, and the woman who finishes first in the class says, I'm going to become a Catholic nun next year. And she did. She was a nun for 18 months. Fortunately, she did not take her final vows. My parents met, they left the Marines, moved to Garden, Ohio. The Geauga folks, I was born in Lake, and I grew up in Geauga County. They raised 6 of us. They built the law firm up to one of the better law firms in Northeastern Ohio, and they got involved in a lot of different businesses, and yes, they achieved financial success. But it's how we grew up. It's the faith. It's hard work. It's the sense of community that I brought into my own livelihood. I brought into my own profession. First as an assistant attorney general, then working in the prosecutor's office in Geauga County, then the private sector, then getting the honor of my life working with my dad and my brother on some of the businesses. But I also grew up a little differently too. I'm going to tell you a story about my grandfather, the one that died when my dad was 12 years old. He fought in World War I. He received a Silver Star from his heroics in May of 1919. He received the second highest award from the French government for those same heroics over 4 days in May. I'm 58 years old. I didn't know about my grandfather's heroics until I was 46. I tell you that story because I come from a family that just gets things done. They don't talk about it, they don't whine about it, they see a problem and they fix it. And if you look at my public service career, that's what I have done. And I look forward over today and over the next few months to be able to show you that my time in Columbus has produced a better Ohio. It's produced better quality of life. It's been better for businesses. And that's what I'm going to take to beat Sherrod Brown, and that's what I'm going to take to Washington to make sure that America is strong. Thank you for coming out. I look forward to the questions.
And now, Secretary LaRose.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you to the three parties for putting this together. Thank you to my opponents for being here. I want to start with this. Of course, we all agree that it's high time that we retire Sherrod Brown, and we're going to be very focused on that very soon. But over the next 2 weeks, there's something else that we should be really focusing in on. I think you all are aware that there's 2 statewide issues. And just remember, if any of your friends ask how to vote, remind them that it's November when we go to vote. And especially when it comes to issue 1. People need to understand how radical this is. Even our pro-choice friends need to understand that this goes way too far. And so I do hope that you give that some thought. I'd also ask you to think about our local candidates, especially school board candidates. We're going to be out doing some door knocking this afternoon for some local candidates. I hope you take the time over the next 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, to do that as well. So my name's Frank LaRose. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. This is home to me. I was inspired by my Boy Scout leader, who was a World War II veteran, to sign up for the Army. I left when I was 18 years old, had the opportunity to go all around the world, had the chance to serve on the U.S.-Mexican border as part of a counter-narcotics task force, and I saw a crisis there 22 years ago that's even worse now. Had the chance to serve in Iraq and Kosovo and Morocco and Oman. Had the chance to become an Army Green Beret and deploy around the world with some of America's truly finest soldiers, even having the opportunity to train alongside of the Israeli Defense Forces, who we pray for right now as they're making an incursion into Gaza. But I came home after that and decided I would go to school, went to Ohio State, earned a business degree, and then I decided to move back home and run for the state senate. did that, and now I keep your elections honest as the Ohio Secretary of State, and I'm proud to say I was the only Secretary of State in the country to earn Donald Trump's endorsement last year. He's pretty strict when it comes to election security. I think that says something about Ohio, that I was the only Secretary of State that he endorsed. We're proud of that. There's a simple reason why I'm running for the United States Senate. We have a country to save. This is not exaggeration, it's not hyperbole to say that we've got a country to save. The woke left, the radical left is taking this country in a fundamentally dangerous direction, and what I'm afraid of is that my generation could be the first in American history to leave this country weaker, poorer, and less secure. I, for one, I'll be damned if that's going to happen on our watch. We need to secure the border. We need to restore this economy. We need to restore parents' rights. We need to restore American strength in the world, and that's why I'm running for the United States Senate. I look forward to this job interview this morning. Thanks, everybody.
And now, Mr. Bernie Marino.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for doing this. Thank you for coming out here on a beautiful Saturday morning. All right, gorgeous day. I know you guys could be out there golfing, but you're here with us. I appreciate that. Right, we can pretend, right? Before I start, I want to acknowledge my wife, Bridget. Bridget and I have been married for 34 years. She spends all of her time on the campaign trail with me for the last 6.5 months. But inspired by the UAW strike, this is her last political appearance for 30 days. Because my other person that's here is Emily, and she's due any day now. Let's hope it's not this morning. I got the chance to meet most of you here. I think most of you know my history. If you don't, quick recap. Born in Colombia, South America. Youngest of 7. My parents, myself, my brothers, my sister, my mom moved to South Florida when I was just before my 5th birthday at the end of 1971. Learned English. What I heard from my parents over and over again back then was about assimilation and about understanding what it meant to become an American and what a privilege that was. And as I see what's going on today, not only in our federal government, but in our institutions, where they want to categorize us into different groups, is terrible. Now, I'll fast forward to how I got to Cleveland, which is about 20 years ago. I had the opportunity to buy a tiny, tiny little Mercedes dealership in North Olmsted, Ohio. Took that one little dealership and built it into a group of 15 dealerships, representing 30 brands, doing about $1 billion in revenue, selling about 20,000 cars a year. A few years ago, I decided to do the natural next step, which is to start a technology company. That's not true. That's not the normal thing to do, by the way. Started that company right here in downtown Cleveland. Everybody thought I was crazy. It was about using blockchain technology to make the car titling process digital. Proud that that company is now in 24 states. Now, despite the Senate ethics laws allowing me to keep that company, I thought being a United States Senator and owning a software company that sells computer systems, software, to state governments would be a conflict. So I've exited that company. As I tell my friends, I'm now fully unemployed. So this is what I do full time, which is what I think it takes to beat Sherrod Brown. And the reason I'm running is very simple. It's not something I would ever imagine that I would do. But I think what's wrong in DC is we have people who, for the most part, have never had any experience in the private sector. And they're down there making laws and rules that affect us business owners every single day. Yep. And they've taken this country right off a cliff. And the only way we're going to change that dynamic in DC is to change who we send there. And for me, if I have the honor of your vote and support, it's 2 terms in the United States Senate, and then I'm coming home. So look forward to it. Thank you so much for having us and for you doing this, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's get down to questions now. The order of answers for this question will be Secretary LaRose, Mr. Marino, and then Senator Dolan. Okay? These are 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay? So we've already talked a lot about Sherrod Brown. We mentioned him a bunch of times in the first few minutes here, which is appropriate, and we all want to see him retired. The question for the candidates is, tell us what you think some of his most egregious policies have been. There's a long list, I'm sure, but perhaps you could isolate for us what you think, what strikes you as some of Senator Brown's most egregious bad policies.
Thanks,
Secretary
Jerry.
Rose.
I'm going to start with a recent one, and hopefully folks notice this, but this just encapsulates the way Sherrod Brown thinks. By the way, understand his history. When he had the chance to go get an Ivy League education, he chose to study Russian communism. That was the degree that he picked. And so I think it's because he's an admirer of it. He's one of these people that thinks if we try socialism one more time, it's going to work. Just a couple months ago, the Biden administration announced this foolish idea that they were going to reward people with a discount on their mortgage rate based on how bad their credit score is. Now think about this. I came home and told Lauren, hey, let's stop paying the bills. We need to drive down our credit score so we can refinance the house. But that's the kind of thinking that these people engage in when they don't have any business background, when they don't know how the free market actually works. This is the 2008 housing crisis all over again if that kind of policy was actually to be implemented. Just a couple years ago, they voted on something to create 87,000 new IRS agents. And when I called Brown out on it, I said, hey, Sherrod Brown's new IRS agents are going to be coming after Ohio small businesses. Well, he rebutted that. He said, no, LaRose is wrong because we told them they can only go after the rich. And he said, we told them they can only go after people who make more than $250,000 a year. Now, follow me on this. The Senate banking chairman must not know the difference between net and gross and doesn't understand how many businesses operate as a pass-through entity, a small sole proprietorship or an LLC. Of course, many farmers make more than $250,000 a year, but it doesn't go in their pocket. It goes into the fuel tank. It goes into the fertilizer spreader. It goes into the seed hopper. Of course, many machine shops make more than $250,000 a year, but it goes into new tool and dies and electricity to run the shop and these kind of things. So, of course, Sherrod Brown's new IRS agents are going to be coming after and hassling small business owners who he considers rich. Those are just a few. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Marino?
I didn't realize the difficulty of this assignment. 2 minutes to say why Sherrod Brown's bad. Holy Lord. Well, first of all, let's just say the biggest problem he had is he's absolutely never had a job in the private sector. Ever in his entire life. That's problem number one. He's the chair of the banking committee. Perhaps it's because he has an ATM card. Okay, I'm guessing that's the qualification. What he's doing today in the banking committee is destroying local and community banks. If you destroy local and community banks, which is what he is doing, you will destroy small and medium-sized businesses. By the way, it's not because he's stupid. Please don't think Sherrod Brown is stupid. He knows exactly what he's doing. This is intentional. What he wants is a vision where you have 4 giant, basically pseudo-government entity banks that are controlled by the federal government so that they can tell us what we can do and what we can't do. That's the ultimate aim. Never think the left is dumb. That's one. Secondly, something that's near and dear to my heart. If it's not enough for these career politicians to confiscate our money, they now want to tell us how to spend our money. And this irrational move towards electric vehicles is going to decimate our auto industry and hand what's left of it to China.
Amen.
Ohio is the largest producer of internal combustion engines in America as a state. Why on earth would we want to get rid of that? Why would we want to get rid of liquid fuels? Energy is number 3. You look at what he wants to do for them, climate change is a cult. The reality is here in America, we need to be an energy dominant country, not energy independent country. Sherrod Brown wants to take us in the wrong direction. On top of all of that, what's fundamentally wrong with Sherrod Brown is he thinks people like me, who risked every cent they had to start a business, owe that success to him and the government and want to take my money and want to take your money. That's how he looks at everything, and that is what's wrong with Sherrod Brown.
Great.
So my job as a nominee is to make sure all Ohioans are going to go vote in November 24 knows the difference between Washington Sherrod Brown and campaign Sherrod Brown. Let me tell you about Washington Sherrod Brown. Washington Sherrod Brown, just in the last 5 years, has voted against giving Americans tax cuts. Washington Sherrod Brown, in the last 3 years, has twice voted against giving Border Patrol more authority to act as law enforcement officers. Washington Chair Brown voted against saving a baby's life if the baby is born through a botched abortion. Think about what Washington Chair Brown, he doesn't represent Ohio in any fashion. And we know that because in 2020 he flirted with running for the president. And what did he run on? I want Washington, D.C. to become a state. I want the Supreme Court to be packed. I want to end the filibuster so we can jam through more liberal ideas. Washington Sheriff Brown does not reflect Ohio's values. Ohio Sheriff Brown comes back here and thinks he's talking for the working man. He's not talking to the working man, he's talking for the union bosses. Because if he was really fighting for the working man, he would be helping those small community banks. If he was helping the working man, he would allow the working man to have more money in his pocket. And finally, Sheriff Brown doesn't care whether we're safe or not. Just a few weeks ago, he supported a young man who's running for prosecutor in this county, in Cuyahoga County, who wants to defund the police, who wants to take police out of the system. And Sheriff Brown said in those comments that the police departments are creating, that they're the ones fostering this culture of racism, the police. We will not be secure. We will not be economically strong, and we will not be a strong America if Sheriff Brown gets 6 more years.
All right, let's move on to the next question. And if the candidates will give me a little leeway here, I'll skip titles because this will be more efficient. The order of answer will be Marino, Dolan, and LaRose. Okay? So this question, now we're talking about the economy here. The U.S. economy grew at a robust 4.9% last quarter, and consumer spending, remarkably, remains pretty strong in most areas. Yet, inflation has reduced consumer spending power, and interest rates are impacting not only home sales, but any debt-related financial activities. And the national debt is now approached, I believe, $33 trillion. For the candidates, what do you make of this strange economy, and what policy changes would you advocate? Mr. Marino.
Thank you, Jerry. So let me just be clear that 4.9% GDP growth is completely misleading. The primary driver of that GDP growth is government spending, specifically around interest payments that the government is making. You know, we were borrowing money at basically almost zero a few years ago, and now we're borrowing money at over 5%. One of our largest debt holders is China. China is raking it in right now because of our federal deficit. There was talk even a few months ago that someday soon debt will be more than defense. It's not soon, it's now. Today, we're spending more on interest payments than we are in defending the United States of America. We have a massive spending problem in Washington, D.C. Now, why is that? Because there's 2 things that are incredibly popular. You want to be the belle of the ball in Washington, D.C.? You advocate for 2 things. Never-ending spending and never-ending wars. Those 2 things are the most bipartisan things that happen in D.C. What you will never hear a career politician talk about is offsets. If you're going to spend more on this, what are you taking away? It's this idea that money is never-ending. As somebody who's run businesses, we can't do that. We have a list of things we want to do, and we have a list of the things we can do. And being able to have that skill set is absolutely critical. But unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., and I'm not talking about just Democrats here, Democrats and Republicans, they've never actually cut spending. They've never actually done that. You find one politician that has actually cut government spending, and I'll show you a unicorn. It does not exist. That's what's got to change to actually address that problem in Washington, D.C.
Now, here's where it matters. I've had the opportunity to be budget chairman 4 times in the state of Ohio, and every one of those budgets has been balanced, which means just like you guys do every day, you don't spend more than you're bringing in. And then you figure out what your priorities are, and that's what you spend on. Just think about what the Democrats have done in Washington. This past fiscal year, they spent $1.7 trillion more than the revenues that are brought in. Now in Ohio, we've cut your taxes. Just Jerry and I in this last budget, we cut your taxes over $3 billion. And yes, we cut the bureaucracy of state government by $1 billion. And we were able to reinvest that into universal school choice so that parents can decide where they want to go. So it's priorities. In Washington, let's not fool ourselves, folks. We've got a very difficult job ahead of us, because the most spending we do in Washington is in 5 areas, 5 really important areas, where each one of us want to accept that social contract that we want to help the elderly. We want to help those who are impoverished for a short period of time. We want to help the disabled, and we want a strong military. Well, those are the areas that we spend most of your dollars. Those areas plus debt service, 82 cents of every dollar you send to Washington goes to those 5 pots. That's where we have to look at reform. That's where somebody like me who understands how Medicaid works, how we could save millions of dollars if the federal government would just get out of the operations of the health system in Medicaid. Medicare. How many of you are on Medicare and have to deal with Plan A? And then you have to rush over and sign up for Plan B. And then you're wondering if even Plan D is even part of that. And then you're told Medicaid Advantage, you can do that, but you have to drop Plan A. That's ridiculous. And that's what's driving the cost of government. I have the experience to do it. I know where priorities lie. I know where there's inefficiencies. Give me the chance to do it in Washington.
Thanks for the question, Jerry. Yeah, the economic statistics don't match the lived reality of Ohioans. And the economy under Biden and Brown, it's hurting Ohio's families. This is something I understand personally. You see, Lauren and I aren't millionaires. We're thousandaires. We live in an 1,800 square foot house. We both have 6-year-old cars. We have to look at the bills every month to decide what we're going to be able to do and what we're not going to be able to do. And this is what a lot of Ohio's families are facing. You can quantify this. It's about $750 a month that Biden's inflation costs. And so it's no mystery why you see labor unrest and people hurting, because the bills at the end of the month are not matching the wages. And we know how to fix this, but this administration refuses to do it. In fact, they're exacerbating it with federal spending. We heard about the national debt, $33 trillion, exceeding the debt payments alone, exceeding the entire national defense budget. Folks, this isn't sustainable. Over 10 years ago, I joined the movement to try to create a federal balanced budget amendment. It is long past time that we get a federal balanced budget amendment done so that the government will have to live within its means. It's time that we cut spending. It's time that we cut spending. And in Washington speak, these people talk about reducing the level of increase as though that's a cut in spending. I'm talking about really reducing spending by eliminating worthless bureaucracies like the U.S. Department of Education that doesn't really educate children. It's built for indoctrinating children and employing adults. And we need to be serious about growing our economy. We know how to do that. We grow an economy through the greatest engine of human prosperity that's ever existed. Lower taxes, streamlined regulations, and energy development right here. Oil and gas from Ohio, building new nuclear plants, making sure that we can actually be energy dominant. That's how we grow an economy, and that's how Ohio families can prosper.
Thank you very much for those answers. Now we're going to sneak in a rapid fire question. This is a minute or less. Less is okay for all 3 of the candidates. We'll just go from left to right here if that's okay. What do you think of the new speaker, and what are your expectations of him? Senator Dolan.
I've only learned about the new speaker in the last 3 days. My expectations is that he will put an agenda together that will show our Republican principles and values and set the stage for 24. What are we fighting for, America? Put it out there so we all have a great story to tell.
I'm excited about the new speaker, although I was really hopeful that we were going to get Jim Jordan in the speaker's chair. But the silver lining is he goes back to be judicial chair and going after the Biden crime family, so that's good news. And so I think the new speaker is a man of faith. I think he's a man of courage. He's a principled conservative. But here's what else I like about him. He's a joyful warrior. He can stand for our conservative principles. He can fight the left. He can fight the woke mob with a smile on his face. I like that about the guy. I think he's going to be able to unite the Republican conference in the U.S. House, which is hard to do, and get them moving in the right direction. And it's about time we get that done.
Where was he 3 weeks ago? Right? So all of a sudden this guy comes out and unanimously gets elected. So it's really, really good news. The reality is Republicans fight with each other too much. The Democrats lockstep. There's no air between them. And one of the rules that I want to see in place in Washington, D.C., which should have been there a long time ago, is Republicans should not be, as a rule of decorum, putting nasty comments about each other on social media. That accomplishes actually nothing. If that happened in my business, I have two managers sniping at each other publicly, they would both be fired. It would never happen again. That's really important. I'm hopeful that what he does is that we keep the promises. We keep the promises that we make to our voters when we go there. Pass the appropriations bills. Get actual good policies at our border done, and then hand that all off to the Senate and make the Democrats in the Senate be the ones that have to deal with saying no. Because right now what's happening is the House is where the attention is, but the Senate is completely dysfunctional.
I hope everybody, particularly the non-candidates in the room, appreciate what a challenge it is for these candidates up here to answer very complex questions on very complex issues in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So hats off to all of you for doing so. Okay, the order of this next question will be Dolan, LaRose, Marino. Okay? I guess that's the way you're sitting. That turns out that way. Two questions, two-part question. Have Biden and Mayorkas violated their oaths of office by keeping the southern border open? And what policies would you advocate to secure the border so we can get back to normalized immigration process? Yeah, sorry. These are 2 minutes. Yes. Senator Dolan.
Both questions are 2 minutes?
Well, talk fast.
So, what Joe Biden and his entire administration and what Sherrod Brown in not voting to support the Border Patrol absolutely is atrocious. I mean, there's no gray area here on the problem amongst the three of us. Our border needs to be secured. And it can be done if you send people to execute. Because remember, Republicans had the keys to the kingdom. We had the White House, we had the Senate, we had Congress, the House, and we didn't put Trump's plan into law. That's right. We've got to be able to execute. Now, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we keep continuing to build the wall where necessary. Continue to put technology. You know, I was there with law enforcement officers from Ohio. A lot of that technology is made right here in Ohio. Go down to Athens, Buckeye Camera. A lot of it is down there in Arizona and Texas. We've got to give more technology. Give Border Patrol the ability to act like law enforcement officers. Reinstate the remain in Mexico. You can't come into this country unless we know you have met the requirements. Right now you come in, you say you want asylum, and then you're released, and you're supposed to come back 18 months later for your hearing. But the other difficult part is, you know, I voted to call cartels what they are, terrorist organizations, but we are going to have to be very difficult with the government of Mexico. We trade with them, we provide aid with them, but they're not willing to join us in taking on the biggest threat in our southern border, and that's the cartels, because they are bringing poison into Ohio. As I travel the state, talk to law enforcement officers, they know people are dying. They know I'm going to do something about it. That's why 19 sheriffs have endorsed me in this race. We have record human trafficking right here in Ohio. It's real. It's affecting us. So absolutely, I will be singularly focused on securing that border. Because we have talked about all kinds of other things, and what happens? The border remains open. We must secure the border.
Thank you.
The first part of the question is, yes, they have absolutely violated their oath. I believe that allowing an invasion to occur of this country, which is effectively what the president and America are doing, borders on treason. What's happening on the U.S.-Mexican border is a full-scale invasion. The Biden administration admitted last week that thousands have come in that are on the terrorist watch list. Let's think about this. Brown said in a televised interview a couple months ago that only the far right is concerned about the border. Senator, you're dead wrong. Because the border, the chaos on the border, the invasion on the border is killing people in our community. 200 a day in this country die from fentanyl. Imagine a fully loaded passenger plane crashing every day. We ground all the aircraft until we figured out what's happening. Well, we know what's happening. Chemicals from China, mixed together in Mexico, smuggled across the border by cartels that should, yes, be defined as foreign terrorist organizations. That's what's happening. And we can do something about it if we have the courage to act. For me, this is personal because I served there. I told you that I was part of a counter-narcotics task force with the 101st Airborne Division where I served on the U.S.-Mexican border. We would find people coming across the border with children, not their own, with bags of drugs shoved into their diapers. Folks, there's a special place in hell for someone that would put a bag of cocaine in the diaper of a child. We need to build the wall. We need to use sensors. We need to use intel. And we need to define these cartels as terrorist organizations and then use the full force of the federal government to do what the nation of Mexico will not do, and that is stop these killers from bringing poison into our country. But we also need to reduce the demand. And the way that you reduce the demand is say that you will not get benefits from coming here illegally. If you don't come here legally, you cannot take advantage of asylum. If you come here illegally, you can never become a U.S. citizen, ever. If you come here illegally, you can never take advantage of government benefits, ever. And if you came during the Biden invasion over the last couple of years, you should be rounded up and deported. It's very simple. Thank you so much.
So I don't want to restate the problem. You've heard the problem already, but let's go through the solutions. First of all, let me just add some nuances there. If you came here illegally, period, you should be deported. The reason we keep having this problem is because we allow backdoor amnesty or any kind of amnesty at all. You won't hear that from them. You need to deport anybody who broke into our country illegally, who had an asylum claim that was faced to be false, because that's what's causing this demand. This is a problem of rewarding bad behavior. We don't need a lot more money for the border. What we need is better policy. So no amnesty is number one. We need to reform our asylum laws. What does that mean? That if you enter our country illegally, you forfeit your right for asylum for life. Number three, if you come here and seek asylum, you have to stay in the previous country. That's the Remain in Mexico policy. And the reason, by the way, that it had to be done through executive order by President Trump was because he had Republicans in DC that didn't have his back. It wasn't the Democrats, it was weak Republicans. Exactly. What we should be doing today is suspending our asylum laws. Saying you cannot enter this country and seek asylum for at least until the end of 2025. And if you don't have a court date passed before January of 24, we cancel that court date because it's mad. It's not 18 months. This is a court date that's 6 or 7 years away. We got to suspend those court dates and deport everybody. These people have not been vetted, have not been screened. This is a clear and present danger to America. Talk to Maria, talk to me, talk to people who came here legally. It is extraordinarily offensive to watch this government. And the question isn't that they violate their oath, Jerry. The question is they should be impeached for doing this. These are people who are traitors to our country for allowing that. 8 million encounters in our country. This has got to be a clear, zero tolerance policy for illegal immigration.
Thank you. The next order will be LaRose, Dolan, and Marino. Question is, switching to something that's very timely right now, do you stand behind Israel, and how would you change the United States policy as it relates to Iran? Secretary LaRose.
Jerry, thank you so much. Would I stand with Israel till the day I die? I would stand with Israel, because as a person of faith, it starts in Genesis. The promise that God made to Abram, who became Abraham, that said, "I'll bless those who bless thee and curse those who curse thee." Even if you're not a person of faith, it makes all the sense in the world, militarily, economically, diplomatically, to stand with our number one ally, the modern state of Israel. What has happened over the last few weeks needs to be put in perspective. On October 7th, Hamas broke through a border wall. Sound familiar? We don't even have a wall in many places. Hamas broke through a border wall and murdered more Jews in one day than have died on a single day since the Holocaust. If that doesn't get your attention, nothing will. Now Israel is engaged in a ground offensive to rid the Gaza Strip of Hamas. Hamas equals Iran. Understand that Hamas equals Iran. By the way, so does Hezbollah. This for me is something I've experienced. I stared down Iranian-backed terrorist groups on the streets of Iraq. Those are the people that we were fighting in southern Iraq. And the Iranians understand one thing, they understand strength. And guess what? Biden's weakness is what gave them a green light to tell their buddies Hamas to break into Israel and kill people. We have to make it clear that Iran will bear the consequences of what their proxies do. Iran will bear the consequences when their proxies bomb American military bases. Iran will bear the consequences when their proxies attack Israel. We have to stand with Israel. We have to go back to President Trump's policy of maximum pressure, not what Biden has done, allowing them to access nearly $100 billion in new revenue, but maximum pressure so that they suffer under the terrorism that they continue to export. We stand with Israel and we fight anti-Semitism right here at home.
So my position on Israel, I just wrote an op-ed, and I had the nerve in the op-ed to talk about the special relationship between America and Israel. I had the nerve in this op-ed to talk about how Israel has every single right to defend themselves, to defend their very existence. Because when you're inside of Israel, like I've been, you recognize that there are people of welcoming people. If you walk down the streets of Tel Aviv, you have Arabs and Jews walking next to each other. This is a terrorist organization that wants to get rid of them. But you know what's troubling in this country? Twitter silenced me last night on that op-ed. That's a problem we're facing. America needs to be clear and unequivocal, and if I'm in the U.S. Senate, I will be. We will stand with Israel. What does that mean? We will provide the ammunition they need. We will provide the resources that we can help them with. Iran, I would be saying, if I were in the U.S. Senate, we would be fighting to get those sanctions back on and stop their oil production. That's what we used to do. We are now making $60 billion. Where do you think that money's going? It's going to Hamas. You're trading with them. The reality is we have to be a strong America. Strong America means we start at home. It means we have to make difficult decisions at home. But we have got to send a message to the world that the United States of America is the strongest military, is the strongest economy, and we have your back when sovereign nations want to commit atrocities, or these dictators want to go into sovereign nations, commit these atrocities, wherever it happens. Because when we turn our back and rescind from the world, the vacuum gets filled by bad people and good people die. And that's what we're facing. I will be a strong ally of Israel, and I will be a strong proponent of the United States of America in this world.
So there will be no stronger ally of Israel in the United States Senate than me. I think one of the things that all of us should do is, if we have friends, in my case, my daughter's mother-in-law is Jewish, reach out to your Jewish friends and just let them know you understand what they're going through and you empathize, and how can you help. What we need to be doing is making it clear that Israel needs the space that they need to do what they need to do. On October 7th, you had lunatics in our federal government calling for a ceasefire. While Israel was being attacked and babies were being beheaded, you had Democrats asking for Israel to show restraint. That's what's wrong. We have to make certain that we expedite the weaponry that they've already ordered. We have to make it clear that to all the nations around there that the U.S. will not allow any further intervention into Israel in this conflict. We have to make certain that Israel knows that we're not going to tell them how to fight this war. They know what they need to do. We don't need to be calling for ceasefires, which is what Joe Biden's doing. But let's be clear. This would never have happened if President Trump was in the White House. It would never, ever happen. On the one hand, Joe Biden has said good things since October 7th. But on the other hand, we know the truth, which is his weakness and his desire to crawl through glass to make a deal with Iran that caused this problem. He enriched them, and we have to stop that. Let me just say one other thing. Senator Serino's here. He's introduced a bill that's very meaningful. We have a problem in our colleges and universities.
Sure do.
When our college students are sympathizing with terrorists that are beheading babies, we have a problem. We should be removing the nonprofit status of these elite universities until they get their act together. And we should be suspending Pell Grant money to these schools that don't respect free speech. And we aren't absolved here. Case Western, CSU, OSU, they're allowing these kids to put sympathetic hate speech where Jewish students do not feel safe in those campuses. Shame on those board of trustees. We need to take action against that. It's really, really important.
Thank you. We're moving along here. The next order will be Dolan, LaRose, and Marino. Question: what policies would you propose to make America's major cities safe again?
Well, first and foremost is police will have no stronger backing than me in the U.S. Senate because I have a history of backing the police in my entire public life. Starting with the Assistant Attorney General right here in Columbus and here in Cleveland. Any of you remember Operation Crackdown, where we went into inner cities to board up crack houses? Well, I rode with the SWAT team. They put the vest on, they put the helmet on, and we drove in early in the morning to raid these houses. The difference is, when we raided into the houses, and the house was on the left, all the SWAT team members went out to the left. I went out to the right and hid until they gave me the all clear sign. So I understand how dangerous their job is. I understand how debilitating citizens feel when you have politicians like Sherrod Brown demonizing the police. When you have prosecutors around this country that aren't willing to prosecute criminals. It causes people to feel insecure and vulnerable. And you're not going to have a strong country, you're not going to have a strong urban core if you're going to make people feel vulnerable. So absolutely, we need to make sure we invest in the police. I have done that. Jerry has done that. In our last budget, we decided it was a priority to fund police officers. So we funded state police, we funded county sheriffs, and we funded local police officers so that they would have the training, equipment, and personnel necessary to protect us. Because you don't want the federal government dictating what everyone should do locally. But you cannot sit back if you're a U.S. Senator and allow our cities to crumble because Sherrod Brown is willing to say that the police officers are contributing to racism. That Sherrod Brown wants to endorse candidates that are openly saying, let's defund the police. We need to feel safe. When you feel safe, you feel strong.
What an utter shame that so many great American cities lie in ruin. And so I think one of the big problems that they have is they've elected these out-of-touch leftists to run their cities. When Lori Lightfoot left the mayor's office in Chicago. She went to become a professor at Harvard, and I remember commenting at the time, what is she going to teach? How to ruin a great American city 101? I was in Chicago a couple weeks ago and went for a run early one morning, and my wife asked me what was it like, and I said, imagine a city run by 14-year-old boys where people can pee where they want, sleep where they want, do whatever. That's the problem that we have in too many cities, is we have a lawlessness problem. And so of course we have to stand with the police to make sure that they are equipped and trained and that they get the moral support. Think of our African American officers. Think about how much we need to stand with them and support them as they sometimes are coming home to neighborhoods where they may not be appreciated for the work that they do. We need to stand with the police, but we also need to make sure that we fight bad leftist ideas like getting rid of qualified immunity. That's an effort underway in Ohio right now. We need to fight that. We need to fight these stupid ideas like getting rid of cash bail. There absolutely should be cash bail, and fighting against these Soros-backed prosecutors who just refuse to prosecute. They say, oh, but it's just a small economic crime. It's just a shoplifting. Okay, well, you know what? The shoplifting leads to other things. And so, of course, we need to be enforcing the law, because if you don't enforce the law, it's not a law, it's a suggestion. And that's what's happening. Retail crime is on the rise and rampant in so many communities where there was a thing on social media last night where CVS in some of their urban stores is not even putting products on the shelf. They're putting little pictures of products on the shelf, and then you have to get it from somebody behind the counter. And so yes, it's time that we stand with law enforcement and restore law and order in America's great cities.
So I think the way you solve this problem is you actually have actions instead of words. So the question is, what are we going to do, or what will I do as your next United States Senator? It's very easy. If you have a city that's not enforcing laws, you don't provide them any federal funding. That's what you have to do. You have to defund these sanctuary cities. You have to hit them where it hurts. In terms of the police, look at the difference between Democrats and Republicans. When there's an incident involving a police officer, Democrats are out there marching. Justin Bibb is out there marching with the BLM protesters and defund the protesters. Where were the Republicans? They're afraid of a bad news story. Why aren't Republican federal officials going to police stations and calling a press conference and go, Steve, I'm standing next to you. You guys are the good guys, not the bad guys. Instead, they're weak in the background going, oh, I don't want to be insulted. Where are we combating the narrative that thousands and thousands of unarmed citizens are being killed by police? It's not true. The numbers are in low numbers, like 20 a year. Where are the Republicans delivering that message? And let me just say this, which I was kind of shocked here in this answer. Education. We've got to fix education in these urban cores. You know, when I got to Cleveland, I'll tell this story quickly, otherwise I'm going to get tackled. The graduation rate for black students was 1% at Tri-C. 1%. And yet Columbus would give them money, everybody would give them money, they throw fancy parties. They try to get Bridget and I give them money. I was broke, so I had no money. I just put it on my business. Make a long story short, we put together a program. We graduated 455 kids through Tri-C at an 85% graduation rate. We have broken education systems in urban cores. They need school choice. Thank you, Columbus, for doing that. We need to make certain that we retain outcomes. And let me just say this, I know we're a little over. COVID policies, not only in this state, but nationally, contributed dramatically to what's happening in our urban cities. And if we don't acknowledge that, we're sweeping that massive information under the rug. I'm not prepared to do that.
We are moving along nicely. I know we're running a little behind schedule, but we started late, but please bear with us. These are important issues here. So the next order will be Marino, Dolan, and LaRose. All indications are that the Justice Department and the FBI have been compromised, and of course public trust, as we all know, in these two institutions and others is way down at historic lows. Do you agree with that assessment? And if you do, what would you do in the Senate to correct it? Mr. Marino.
We have two tiers of justice in this country, something I would never have imagined saying when my family came here a long time ago. Now, from the country I came from, that's just called Monday, by the way. Never thought that would happen in America. If you're a Democrat, if you're a liberal, you have one source of justice. If you're well connected, if you're a conservative, you're treated very differently. Look what's happening to President Trump. If this afternoon, President Trump announced that he wasn't running for president, all these charges would be dropped. We have to acknowledge that. That's a big problem. What we need to do, and what I will do as United States Senator, is make certain that we confirm a director of the FBI, somebody like my friend who's endorsed me, Kash Patel, somebody like my other friend, Matt Whitaker, who's endorsed me, who is acting Attorney General. We need an Attorney General and an FBI director that's not just going to put lipstick on that pig. We need massive reform, levels deep into that organization. We need a clean house at the top levels of both of those systems. And what we should be doing today is we should be impeaching Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, not because it's actually going to result in them leaving office, but because we find out what are the communications between Biden trying to put in jail his leading political opponent. Where are the Republicans calling for that, insisting on that? They don't, for one reason and one reason only. For the most part, they're afraid of bad news stories, and they're fundamentally too weak to say what needs to be said. We need to change that dynamic in Washington, D.C.
Well, that's why you're all here this morning on a rainy Saturday, because elections matter. Because what happens in November of 24 cannot be what happened in November of 22 and November of 18, where Republicans lost and we turned the gavel over to the Democrats. And when that happens, you don't have the opportunity to do that deep dive on FBI directors and everybody else who comes before the Senate. That is one of the most crucial jobs of the United States Senate, is that advise and consent role. So you can ask the questions. You can make sure that they understand the Constitution, that they understand that there's equal justice under the law, and it's blind justice. Because it's not happening today. It's not happening today because Republicans have not won elections. So when you think about that question, you have to think about at the same time, who can beat Sherrod Brown? Because it does not matter if Sherrod Brown is back in the Senate for 6 more years. That's what this race is going to be about. Because there's no difference amongst the three of us that this justice system under Biden is horrible, it's unconstitutional, it's dangerous. But the only way we're going to fix it is win elections. We have to win in Ohio. We have to win in Montana. We have to win in West Virginia. We've got to get the gavel back in the U.S. Senate. So let's make sure that we're electing people who have the experience to win, have the experience to get things done, who understand the role of the United States Senator to make sure that we have equal justice, that the people who are going to be sworn in as our FBI director or any other law enforcement officials knows what Lady Justice is all about, and that we can walk in the street, whether you're a president of the United States or whether you're just turning 18 years old, you are treated the same under our laws.
It is absolutely crucial that we beat Sherrod Brown next year, because only when we do that can we take back the United States Senate majority, and only when we do that can we really do a lot of these things that we've all been talking about up here. And this is my value proposition for our party. I think you want a battle-tested conservative. I think you want somebody that has proven that he knows how to win statewide elections. I'm the only one up here who has been elected to statewide office and won 4 statewide contests, 2 primaries and 2 generals, and last year with more votes than anyone in the history of the Secretary of State's office. I'm the one who can run and beat Sherrod Brown. But let's get back to the question. There is absolutely a 2-tiered system of justice in this country, and it didn't just start under Biden. It goes all the way back to the Obama administration when they were spying on President Trump. and they were spying on his campaign. Where are the consequences for that? This two-tier system of justice is not just at the very senior ranks, but in the top echelons. It's not the board, it's not the men and women at the rank and file level, these FBI agents and folks that are working to do their job, but the upper echelons of those organizations are absolutely rotten. Those organizations need to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. And it is important that we have a confirmation process in the Senate that very carefully scrutinizes the people that end up in these senior ranks. That's something that I would be very much focused on. Let's look at what's happening to President Trump right now. The president had a concern about the way the elections were run in Georgia. So what did he do? He called the Secretary of State. I get calls like that all the time. It's not illegal to complain to an election official when you don't think they did their job well. If it was, then why isn't Stacey Abrams in jail? Because she spent a year trying to get the Georgia governor's election overturned. But what the Democrats say is, there's the 14th Amendment, we're going to have to keep President Trump off the ballot. They came to me and said, they wrote a letter and said, hey, you should reject President Trump from the ballot in 2024. You know what I told them? Bullshit. Not in Ohio. Thank you so much.
Okay. Before we go to the next question, I want to have us all recognize a good friend of the party and a good friend of Northeastern Ohio, Dick Pogue. Let's give Dick is a fixture in Northeastern Ohio and has supported probably every candidate that are here today and over the years, and we appreciate you coming out on a Saturday morning.
Thanks,
Thank you for all your dedication. Okay, the next order will be Dolan, Marino, and LaRose. Question is, we have a large Ukrainian population here in Northeastern Ohio, and other places in Ohio, but predominantly up here. Question is, do you support continuing aid to the Ukrainian people? Senator Dolan.
Yeah, thanks for the question. This is a continuation of my answer to the Israeli tragedy. I do. I do not like and support the way President Biden is prosecuting this war. Had I been in the U.S. Senate, I would have set our boundaries. What is our goal? Our goal is the 2022 boundaries. And what ammunition, weaponry, and aid do you need to achieve that goal? So I could report back to you we're on pace to do that. But Ukraine, in Russian hands, creates a national security interest for the United States of America. It creates an economic interest. If you travel the state and talk to farmers, they'll tell you that their fertilizer prices have shot through the roof since the war began. If Russia is allowed to stay in Ukraine, that's not going away. Have you seen the price of bread and any flour material because of our inflation? Now double that if Ukraine is lost to Russia. 25% of our wheat comes from Ukraine. China is watching us. Is there any consequences to a sovereign nation coming in, or to a dictator coming into a sovereign nation? And let's not forget our Ukrainian friends right here in Ohio, because it is horrific what we saw on October 7th. But guys, the same thing is happening under the direction of Putin. That man is a murderer. That man is committing atrocities to our Ukrainian friends and their family over there. America needs to stand up. America, we talk about oversight. I want oversight on every dollar that America, whether it's going to Ukraine, whether it's coming to Cleveland. But we cannot turn our backs and rescind. And finally this. President Trump kept Putin out of Ukraine. He was strong. We all like that. Ask yourself, why was he so strong? Because he understood that Putin going into Ukraine is a national security interest, and I now will not roll over. I will not appease Putin, and I will not appease Iran.
Well, this is where we have a difference of opinion, not only here on stage, but in the party. First of all, we need to acknowledge that this would never have happened if President Trump was in office. That's why when I hear, Matt, you say that you're not sure if you support Trump or not as president, versus Biden is very concerning to me, because the reality is it would never have happened if he were in office. What we need to do today is drive towards peace. This idea that we're going to fund another endless war, like I said earlier, is a very, very bipartisan issue in Washington, D.C. We need to end the killing in Ukraine. Peace is not appeasement. And please do not compare what happened in Israel with what happened in Ukraine. It's two extraordinarily different things. That's exactly what Biden and the Democrats and Schumer want to do today in Washington, D.C. They want to package and bundle all of it because they know that supporting our friend Israel is popular and supporting Ukraine is not. That's the last thing we should be doing. What China is watching is a military that's being depleted, a military that's being depleted for equipment and resources, us fighting possibly a four-front war, which we cannot do. And what they're also watching is how we resolve these conflicts. The leader of the world does not encourage more killing. The leader of the world drives towards peace. There is no plan for peace that's ever been articulated in the United States government, and that is a huge problem. Now, we had a question earlier about government spending. What's the offset? Tell me what you want to cut from Americans. What do you want to take away from American citizens to fund the salaries, the pensions of government employees in Ukraine? And if you think for a second that that money's going to the right places, then believe me, you're very naive. Or do you want to borrow more money from China to fund salaries of government employees in Ukraine? I, for one, absolutely do not.
So we all agree that if President Trump had been in the White House, that Vladimir Putin would not have rolled across that border, and it's because of a very simple prospect. It's a simple idea that it's not American it's not American strength which is provocative. It's not American strength which is destabilizing. It's American weakness which causes instability around the world. And so I, for one, believe that we need to return to peace through strength. Be that strong nation that, yes, focuses on our domestic priorities. In my oath of office as a United States Senator, my first priority will be the protection of the people of this country. And so I would say not a dime for Ukraine until the southern border is secure. But the most exceptional nation on the planet can also accomplish many things at the same time. And so once we solve that very real and present danger, we can make sure that we end that conflict quickly and in a way that doesn't involve surrendering to Vladimir Putin. You see, the quickest way to end any war is to simply wave the white flag, and that's not a smart strategy either. Nobody wants to see an endless war, and so the way that you end a war is by being decisive about it. And I believe that when President Trump's back in the White House in 2025, he will work to very quickly end that war, but not by waving a white flag and saying, hey, Vlad, take whatever you want out of this country. We end that war by supporting our Ukrainian brothers and sisters in ways that we can do without actually spending a lot more money. This administration has not forced the Europeans to bear their fair share of the burden. They've not made sanctions work the way that the sanctions should work. They have not taken the Russian assets and used them to help fund the Ukrainians. Russian assets that have been frozen that could be used for that. They've also not put in my guys. The Army Green Berets really exist for one big reason. And that reason is to train foreign forces to fight their own fights. You can put Army Green Berets in the safety of Poland or Hungary or Romania, and for virtually no cost, train these Ukrainian warfighters and send them back in there better prepared to fight and end that war and do so very quickly. I think that's what we do as it relates to Ukraine.
Okay, we're going to go to a couple of rapid response questions here very quickly. First one is, and we'll the more brief the answer, the better, probably, so we can get move on here. Question is, do you believe climate change is an existential threat to the United States? Oh, I'm sorry. We'll just go left to right again. Senator Dolan.
The way the question's written, no, I don't. But I do know that climate events are hurting our economy. So I am not for America acting alone, but I am for American innovators in technology and breakthroughs to try to figure it out. And we shouldn't put a damper on that. And I'll give you one example, and I'll be quick. You talk to any farmer, they'll tell you the same amount of rain is happening. It's just happening in one short burst, which is causing huge problems with their crops and with their growing. So we need to recognize that American ingenuity can handle these problems. We shouldn't stifle it though. Allow the private sector to problem solve what is real out there. I just gave you an example of something farmers need help on. Let's make sure that American innovation is still present and we don't mix the signal and cut everything off because it has to do with weather.
No, and it's become a cult religion of the far left. Right? Now, let's be honest about something. Of course we want to protect the environment by reasonable things. We don't want the Cuyahoga River on fire again. We don't want to pollute the air. Of course we want to do reasonable things. But what is really happening right now is the climate cult on the left is causing more harm. I think there are more people that have been harmed by bad climate policy than actual climate change. That's right. And they're indoctrinating our children with this. My 12-year-old comes home from school 4 months ago and says, Mommy, Daddy, teacher said we're all going to die from climate change. Honest to God. That's the kind of problem that we have. And so, yes, we need to make sure that we get America out of the Paris Climate Accord and that we fight this cult of climate change on the far left.
So the question is it an existential threat? Absolutely not. So now, I do want to get back to something which is really, really important because I don't love this format, to be honest with you, because I think we need to have, hopefully we'll get some debates agreed upon soon, but here's what I want you to understand because you have a big decision to make. This is a big election, it runs through a lot. Here's what I know as a business guy, and I said it earlier. Here's a list of things I want to do, and here's the things I can afford to do. Only in Washington, D.C. does that second thing not matter, that you can just make money evaporate, come from the sky. If you're giving, for every cent that you're giving Ukraine, which by the way is now approaching almost $200 billion, tell me exactly what you're going to take away from American citizens, or whether you are going to borrow more money from foreign governments to fund those expenditures. That's the walk and chew gum line. Yeah, you can walk and chew gum. You can do all kinds of things if money's unlimited. That's what you don't hear from politicians in DC. They make us believe that money rains from the sky. We know where it comes from. It comes from our hard work, our wallets, and our efforts. So we need to treat that money with respect, and that's what our career politicians in DC do not do.
Yeah.
Okay, this will be our last general question. We might sneak in one rapid fire after this, but and the order will be LaRose, Dolan, and Marino. We had a lot of discussion about this. We just witnessed something in the House in the speaker race that illustrates the problem here. Democrats in Congress always seem to stick together, don't they? But Republicans, it's been said, form a firing squad in a circle sometimes. Okay? We need to unify. What can Republicans do to become more unified?
Is it still rapid fire?
I'm sorry?
Still rapid fire?
No, this is a 2-minute question. Sorry. So what would you do as in the Senate to try to help bring the party together?
All right, thank you, Jerry. And you're right, you don't need to be a ballistics expert to understand how circular firing squads work. We do form those far too often in the GOP. Part of it's in our mindset too, though. And this is something that we shouldn't fight against because this is who we are. You see, the liberals are collectivists. They believe in everybody grouping together and following the leader and doing what they're told. We are individualists, rugged individualists, who think for ourselves. We believe that human freedom is the solution to problems, not more following of other people's orders. And so we shouldn't change that part about us. But I'll tell you what we need to be is a party of ideas. A party that articulates ideas and then works aggressively to get them done, and not just become tribal, where it's about identity. Hey, we go to war with the donkey tribe because we're the elephant tribe. That's not how we move forward as a party. We need to unite around ideas, and when we do so, we can get things accomplished. And that's why I, for one, would say any one of these gentlemen up here would be a hell of a lot better than Sherrod Brown. I think I'm going to be the one running against him, but if it's not, I'll be proud to support either of them. That's the kind of party unity that we're going to do.
Thanks, Frank. I'm glad you joined me in that. Every one of us will be better. Here's what we're missing as Republicans. You know, we do a lot of personality analysis. We don't do a lot of results analysis. Let's just play out what happened in Washington. I talked earlier about $1.7 trillion being spent more than the revenues brought in. Yet the Democratic Senate, in trying to counter that, puts a bill up that cuts government by 0%. The House, led by Republicans, was working on a bill that would have cut government by 30%. Yet 23 Republicans joined with all the Democrats to kill that bill. So that the discussion wasn't about government spending. The question wasn't about Republicans who want to rein in and bring fiscal discipline back to Washington. The story was about us, chaos, circular firing squad. We don't focus on results. We missed a golden opportunity to set the pace for 24. What is 24 going to be about? So let's focus on personality. You know, we're shouting today because we have to. But sometimes the loudest shouter is not a fighter. They're a noisemaker. And in my career, both publicly and privately, I have been a fighter to get my agenda, the agenda of Republicans, across the finish line. And I do that by bringing people to the agenda. You have to fight harder to get to a yes. It is easy to stand here and tell why you didn't support something. But if we get that gavel as Republicans, we can't do what we did in the past. We absolutely have to lead with everything that we believe in and get things done. Let's focus on that.
That's right.
So now this is the Saturday morning truth part of the session here, and if I'm impolite, I'm sorry. The reason Republicans are in this situation that's different than the Democrats is because when the Democrats campaign on a set of issues, they go down to Washington, D.C., and they deliver on those exact promises. They don't deviate from them. That's why you see the low dollar donation is so much higher among Democrats than Republicans, because Democrats keep their promises. You look at the people who elected Joe Biden, obviously we don't like him, but they kept their promises. They fundamentally changed this country in an incredible way in an incredibly fast period of time. On the Republican side, we have a problem. We have Republicans on our side who say everything you want to hear. But when they go to DC, they do none of those things. Because what happens is they're more focused on their next election, that next committee assignment. What's going to get them, hopefully, maybe even someday to the White House. In my case, as you know, I wasn't born here, going to serve 2 terms, I'm coming home. I don't have a replica of the Oval Office in my basement, like most of these career politicians. That's the problem. So when they go and say, hey, these are the set of issues we're going to do, they don't do it. There's only been one Republican. Dick, you know this, you've been around this for a long time. One Republican that kept his promises.
Trump.
That's it. And look at the punishment he's getting, because Republicans are afraid of the media. They're afraid of the special interest groups. They're afraid of these very, very powerful donors. I am not going to be the preference of the Republican establishment in this race, because I'm the guy who they know they can't control and cannot manipulate. They're the one that I am not the one that they can predict what I will do. And that's what makes my race different than my opponents. If you want to change DC, change who you send there. That's the bottom line.
Okay, our last question, which should take no more than 10 seconds. You don't even have to time this. And it was partially answered by one of the candidates already, but it was on my list of questions. Will you wholeheartedly support whoever is the nominee in Ohio for the U.S. Senate? Why don't we just start
Yes.
from right to left?
Yes.
You're not qualified if you don't say yes. 100% yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that didn't even take 10 seconds. Because that really relates to the previous question a great deal. How do we stick together as Republicans? Because we have the better ideas, and we seek the truth, and we are honest in our policies. That has to win at the end of the day. And our candidates can all deliver that, certainly. And we should be proud of the candidates that we're putting forward here as a party. So now I appreciate your patience because we did start late and we've gone a little bit late here, but now we'll give all three of them an opportunity to give a 3-minute closing. And I assume they'll be around for a little bit afterwards if people want to talk to you. And the order will be Marino, LaRose, and Dolan for the closing comments. And please be attentive for this last segment of our program this morning.
Well, first of all, let me just say specifically to the people in this room, thank you for so much. Thank you so much for what you do for our party, for our county, for our state, for our country. You're the tip of the spear. You're the people that show up, make phone calls, put out yard signs, hand out literature. You're the active members of our party. We need to rebuild our state party. I'm going to talk about you for a second now and not about me. I believe to be effective as a United States Senator, it can't be a selfish relationship. Let me explain what that means. We have a lot of national problems that we got to fix. We also have a lot of local problems that we got to fix. So what I'm doing now is I've committed to spend no money on media because I don't want to compete and raise media costs for local elected officials and for issue 1 and issue 2. I'm not putting out yard signs for exactly that same reason. Bridget and I have screened and talked to over 50 local school board candidates all over the state, where not only have we endorsed them, but we've put our money and asked our supporters to put the money behind those school board candidates.
Amen.
As your United States Senator, I'm not going to go to Washington, D.C. and move there. Spend Tuesday to Thursday there. Bridget has explained to me that I may have a job that takes me to D.C., but home is here. That means that I'm going to go around the state and make sure that we advocate for school board candidates using this power of that Senate office. Advocate for city council races, county commissioners. We cannot win only at the federal level. In fact, fundamentally, you should know that my lens in DC is always going to be, is this better down at the local level or the federal level? And if it's even close, it goes to the local. But that means we have to have good local candidates running. That means a well-funded county party that's able to actually advocate and grow the pot. This is the imperative for anybody who's in federal office. And as you know, Senator J.D. Vance endorsed me earlier in this race. Very proud of the fact that he did. We've talked about that. We're going to make a great team together in Washington, D.C., helping drive positive changes in our county parties and our local communities. That is really, really important. You have my commitment that I'll do that. But I also think it's important for you to look at the contrast here in this race. And if you want a professional politician, somebody who's trained how not to actually answer the questions that are asked because they're afraid of actually staking out a position, that's not me. I'm not going to be that person. I'm always going to tell you the truth of what it is that I believe, whether you want to hear it or whether I know you agree with it. That's the difference in this election. You support this, go on BernieMarino.com, join the movement. We're the largest fundraiser in America, last 2 quarters in a row. Volunteer on our website. We love your help. Thank you so much.
So we are, as a party, an important organization. Local county parties, our state party, but we're not a social organization. We enjoy each other's company, but this is not a social organization. We're a mission-based organization. That mission is to identify those people who share our values and then to help them win office and then to hold them accountable once they're there. Thank you all for being involved in the county parties, especially thank you to our chairman for the work that you all do. It's a thankless job sometimes to be a county party chairman. Thank you so much. Over the next week and a half, there's some really important decisions to make. So I started with this and I'm going to end with this. Please get out and help your candidates for local office, especially school board. That's what I'm spending my time doing. I was out knocking 2 or 3 other days this week. I've got this weekend, we're doing door knocks all over the state for our school board candidates. Please get out and help them. Please make sure that you vote between now and November 7th on issue 1. Vote no on issue 1 and 2. That's very important as well. I'm going to end with this. I said this is a job interview, and so it's important to understand who each of these candidates are. And it's important to understand what the contrast is between each and every one of them. I'm proud to say that I'm the only real battle-tested conservative in this race. I'm the one who has the track record to show that I will fight for your values. Talk is cheap. It's easy to say whatever you want to say, but when the heat is on and you've actually got to make really tough decisions and cast a vote in favor of conservative public policy, I've proven that I've done that. I'm the only candidate up here with a 100% pro-life voting record. I'm the only candidate up here with a 100% pro-Second Amendment voting record, and I'm the only one with a consistent voting record of voting to cut taxes and never to increase them. I'm also the only lifelong Republican in a 3-way Republican primary. I'm the only one that's never been a Democrat. I think that that's important for people to know. People have conversions and that kind of thing, but that's a fact. I'm also the only one up here who's not a millionaire. And we celebrate prosperity, don't get me wrong, but there are already a majority of people in the United States Senate who are millionaires. As I told you, Lauren and I are thousandaires. We know what it means to live the life of a normal Ohioan, and I don't think we need more rich men north of Richmond. Now listen, again, prosperity is something that we celebrate, and that's a great thing. But I think that we need somebody who lives like Ohioans, who understands what Ohioans face and understands their struggles, and that's who I am. I'm the battle-tested conservative who has 3 school-age children, so I know exactly about the indoctrination that's occurring in too many of our schools, and I will fight it because Lauren and I are not interested in co-parenting with the government or with anyone else. We want our children to be raised with our values. I will fight to secure the southern border because I know that the future of our country is at stake, and I'll fight to get our economy back on track. My name is Frank LaRose. I'm running to serve as your next United States Senator. Our website is franklarose.com. I'd ask you to check it out, and please join our movement. Thank you so much, everybody.
Once again, thank you everybody for coming out. It means a lot that you took the time to listen to 3 of us. Thank you to the chairman. Jerry did a great job. Thank you for that. As to issue 1, we all agree on it. I trust. What I say is go have uncomfortable conversations over the next 2 weeks. Because that's the person that we need to get to understand how dangerous this proposition is and get them to vote no. So don't talk to just people who already agree with us. Well, let's have those uncomfortable conversations. You know, as I look around this room, I see a lot of people that I've had the opportunity to work with both in the public and the private sector. I see Carol from Geauga County over there, Dan here from Cuyahoga County, John from Lake County. I've stood before you and asked for your support. And what I said was, look, I know from the private sector, I know that taxes in Ohio are too high. In fact, when I got involved, they were at 7.2%. Over my budgets, it's down to 3.5. Sure, there's more to do, but I said what I wanted to do, and I did it. Regulations are killing businesses. In Biden administration, they figured it cost $10,000 per household just on the regulatory environment he has created in his 3 years. In Ohio, I understood that. That's why we implemented Trump's 2-for-1 plan. That's why we implemented 30% reduction in state regulations in all across state Ohio by 2025. I said I was gonna do it, and I did it. And we all know what's happening to our schools. It's not just that the kids aren't being educated to meet tomorrow's demands, economy demands, is that they are being indoctrinated. They are being taught a false history. But it's not just enough to yell and scream about it. What did I do about it? I joined with Jerry and other Republicans all throughout this state and said enough is enough. Let's give parents more choice. Let's have universal school choice. Let's invest taxpayer dollars to make sure our kids have the best opportunity to get educated, don't get indoctrinated, and prepare for their tomorrow. You all said it was an issue. I said I was going to go work on it, and we got it done. That's what this race is about. I told my grandfather's story at the beginning because I'm super proud of a guy I never met. But it's because that's how I was raised. You see a problem, you fix the problem. You don't just yell and scream and talk, you do. I'm the only one with a proven record up here. But let's talk about the record. You guys know in Cuyahoga County, we've lost Rocky River, we've lost Westlake, we've lost Bay Village. Those are big voting blocks that we can't afford to lose. Who is the only Republican who's won those three areas? Me. I am Sherrod Brown's worst nightmare in his own county. He's not going to win hardly any counties in Ohio. But he's going to run up the score here. He will not be able to do that with me. I'm Matt Dolan. Please go to dolanforohio.com. You can learn more about our position. Thank you for coming out today.
Well, thank you, candidates. Just a couple of closing remarks here. I was talking with Judge Lucci earlier while we were in breakfast line here, and we were talking about that this isn't just a political battle that we're in; it's a cultural battle, right? A lot of the values that are being challenged right now are very cultural in nature, and part of that's why this election and all of the elections in these times are so critical. These are not just picking candidates; it's about making sure that we stand up for the values that are important to us and to our families. And we can all do a lot in our own families, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and in our churches to make sure that the young people have some idea. My wife and I have raised 9 children in Lake County, and I mean, that's the only county. We don't have kids in other counties. Just to clarify that.
To clarify.
Yeah, just to clarify that. I only have one family, and we have 38 grandchildren. And I'm happy to say that they are all Republicans. The 4-year-olds don't know it yet. They will soon find out what they need to do. So it's a voting block, and it helps me in Lake County. But we have to do this for them. That's why I came out of retirement for the 3rd time and decided to run for the Senate, because I care about policy and I care about the generations that are going to follow us. Everybody in this room has a stake in that. I want to thank our 3 county chairs for putting this event on. Great job. And I absolutely want to thank our 3 candidates here. As I said before, it's really difficult to answer some of these very complex questions in 2 or 3 minutes, and even in 1 minute for the rapid fire ones. But they did a great job, and the purpose of today is pre-primary is to help all of us as voters in the Republican Party differentiate amongst candidates and figure out who best suits what are important to us. And I think that's why events like this are so valuable. But we do appreciate your professionalism, as I fully expected, in conducting yourselves and letting your opinions be known to the people here. And have a great day, rest of the day campaigning, I'm sure. So thank you.
Before you guys hold this first, we're gonna do a You actually did